delighted to welcome, first of all, this afternoon to you, Emma Goodman from EDMO Central. And Emma is the person who's leading on the media literacy activities within EDMO. So welcome, Emma. Hi.
Hi, thank you.
We kind of agreed you could give us a bit of an update maybe on what's happening at the moment with EDMO Central and with any activities going on around media literacy at the moment.
Yes, sure. And so I imagine that a lot of you already know what EDMO is, but I was just going to very quickly just introduce it just in case there are new people here. So the idea for a European Digital Media Observatory to tackle disinformation emerged out of the discussions of the high-level expert group on fake news and online disinformation. And so it's an European Commission funded project led by the EUI, which is the European University Institute, that started work in mid-2020. And we are currently waiting to find out whether the same EU-led consortium has been successful in the tender process for the next phase, which will begin at the end of the year. So it's kind of a hard time to talk about, what's coming, because we really have to wait for this decision. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. But so in terms of media literacy, the central EDMO team isn't producing its own media literacy content, but what we're doing is trying to support and enhance the work of practitioners across Europe, mapping the landscape and facilitating knowledge exchange. So in practical terms, this means publishing resources on our website, including an overview of what's going on at a European level, and we're doing country profiles for each of the member states. And we are organizing training sessions, and we hope going forward to develop a sort of directory of best practices in media literacy.
Super. Which countries are already available in terms of the national profiles?
So far we have France, Italy, Croatia, Finland, a couple of others, and there's another round about to be published.
Sorry, I put you on the spot and didn't warn you before.
And I was just gonna say about the hubs,
yes.
So there's also 8 national hubs, which are at the moment covering 16 countries, but the next round of hubs, which will cover the remaining EU member states, will be announced very, very soon. And each of these, some are national, some are multinational hubs. They pull together academic researchers, fact checkers, media literacy practitioners, and other stakeholders. And so each of them has a different kind of media literacy partner involved, and each one is doing its own activities. And a few weeks ago, many of us gathered in Prague for the CEDMO International Conference, where we had the opportunity to discuss our current projects and future plans. And it was great to see this sort of wide range of initiatives that are taking place in the hubs. And some are sort of expanding existing initiatives, others are starting new projects. And it's really great for them to have an opportunity to share their resources and findings at an event like this.
Yeah, and indeed, we're delighted with CEDMO as being our second hub that we're going to be coming to later on in the session. So we'll hear more from Lucie and colleagues then. Emma, thank you very much. That's great. We can probably put a link into the chat if anybody would like to have a direct connection to where those national profiles are, so that you can have a look at the ones that are there already. So without further ado, let me start off with our first hub this afternoon. So we're moving north of the continent, and I'm delighted to welcome Kari Kivinen, education outreach expert at EUIPO, but also from Nordis, which is the name of the hub, which covers, as you can see, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. So Kari is going to introduce us to what they're doing in the hub at the moment and tell us a bit more about several recent activities. So Kari, over to you. If you have any questions for Kari during this, put them into the chat and we'll put them to him at the end of his session. Kari.
So, thank you and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. And I hope that you can see my screen now.
Perfectly, thank you.
All right. So here today, I'm representing mainly Faktabari, which is the Finnish fact-checking organization. We have been doing fact checks for quite a long time. And already a long time ago, we noticed that fact checks are not enough. We have to do something else to prevent the disinformation to be spreading. And we have chosen the education, and we have been working with Finnish experts, journalists, media specialists, pedagogues different authorities in order to develop tools for teachers, students, but now also more and more to citizens, so that they can verify their social media content. But I would like to start with the advertisement. Yesterday, I have had a pleasure together with Sally to participate in this expert group of the European Commission on tackling disinformation and promoting digital literacy. And yesterday was a big launch day. We have been working for 9 months. And yesterday the report and the guidelines for teachers were published, but also press release, infographics, fact sheets. And I warmly recommend you to check this material. It's very fresh, and it has been kind of launched yesterday. The Nordic countries are in many rankings. In this kind of media literacy rankings, we are topping the ranks. Finland, sometimes Norway, sometimes Iceland. And when Eurostat did a study about who has seen the untrue or doubtful information, you can see that the Finns and the Nordics have been quite active on detecting that, which is good. We have an excellent school system. We have, in Finland, excellent curriculum, and I come back to that a little bit later. But there was a second question, that individuals who have not checked the truthfulness of the information because they felt that they lacked skills or knowledge. And once again, Finns are topping. And this is interesting. So the only way I have interpreted it is that the people are aware that there is a lot of disinformation in the online environment, but sometimes we are simply not having enough skills to be able to verify it. And the more aware you are, the more easy it's to admit that I'm not able to find it. So in the Faktabari, we have not dealt with the whole multiliteracy, which is the Finnish curricula. We have not even dealt with the media and information literacy, which is let's say the UNESCO and the Anglo-Saxon approach for media and information literacy. In the first, we were interested in information, access to the information, and now very recently on online information, digital information literacy. And I'm going to present you what we have done recently on this particular area. And I have to say that in Finland, we have a good media education tradition. We have a Finnish Kari, which is the Finnish Audiovisual Institute, and I saw that there are some members following it. They are doing excellent work. But as a Faktabari, interested in facts and information, we are concentrating on digital information literacy. So we have published very recently, about 3 weeks ago, together with Sitra, Finnish think tank, the Digital Information Literacy Guide. And I'm going to, in my little speech, to highlight some of the issues, what we consider to be inside of this digital information literacy, because it's quite big area in spite of the fact that we have focused already quite in a narrow way. So first of all, we are defining the digital information literacy, the ability to access, manage, etc., information through digital technologies. And it also includes the idea that we are aware of the algorithms, the role of the platforms, and the whole digital information landscape at large. And then it's linked very much to democracy and active citizenship, because the digital platforms can be also used to be active part of the citizenship actions. We have been collaborating, actually I have been had a possibility to collaborate with DIGCOMP 2.2 competencies. And if you are sometimes looking for a framework for how to place what is digital skills, how does it look like? The DIGCOMP 2.2, which was published in March by Joint Research Center, is having a pretty good answer. It gives us a framework and a common vocabulary and also a common outcomes of what the European citizens should be able to do. And these information literacy skills are in the heart of the whole DITSCOMP area. I warmly recommend you to have a look of this. Here are some examples of the DITSCOMP. Awareness that online environments contain all kinds of information, including mis and disinformation. The difference between different types of false information can be, the people should be able to differentiate sponsored from other content, etc., etc. It's really worth looking. And it's also having the attitude part, which is needed. So there is this myth that our youngsters are digital natives. And without any doubt, they are excellent in using devices. But when we are asking them to analyze the online sources, to do really have a look, there is a lot of research, especially in the Stanford University group, which shows that that students, even university level students, are not so easily distinguishing, let's say, twisted messages from the kind of real information. We have also a specialist in our team who is looking on the online behavior of the Finns. And the interesting phenomenon is that during the COVID and recently during the Ukraine war, the online use have been increased. People are looking more information from online sources, and it's kind of a trend at this moment. The other trends are Reels from TikTok, Instagram, and even now Facebook are growing. Young people are moving to the chunk of little bit more closed environments like WhatsApp or Snapchat, which are not open to other people. And the fake content and the bot reactions are on the rise. Among our team, we have also university research, and this critical group is doing a pretty fantastic work on evaluating the online reading skills of pupils of different age, but also they are working with teachers and especially with the teacher education units. And they are little by little now publishing interesting results on their research, and they are kind of confirming the information we had, for example, from Stanford. One of the big findings for us is that we have all learned to read text, printed text in the school. The online reading is different because there is an unlimited amount of text, and we have to be able to select what we are using, where we are spending our attention, our time, and our energy, because it's endless. And the online environment is also changing all the time. Contents can be removed, added, modified, and the results of the search engines, they are not very transparent. You can buy priority position in the search. You can use different kind of technical tricks to make your post to be in the top. So it's left to us to kind of navigate on the online environment, and it needs a lot of cognitive capacity. That's why special online reading skills should be developed, and we are presenting this kind of basic things like debunking, strategic ignorance, lateral reading, civic online reasoning, click restraint, etc. And if you want to read more, download our thing and read it. We are seldom speaking about the rights of digital citizens, and we are sometimes feeling that we are on the mercy of the big platforms. But luckily, there are institutions like the United Nations, EU, which are fighting for the rights for the digital users. And we should also be aware of that side. Digital users have certain rights. We are not on the mercy of online companies. We had Claire Wardle in our seminar this spring, and she presented a little bit updated version of the types of information disorder, and we are presenting them in our documentation. Especially during the Ukraine war, I mean the Russian invasion in Ukraine, there is more and more political propaganda in our network, in our social, and in order to understand what is the propaganda, what are the mechanisms of propaganda, there is an article written by our specialist in propaganda, which is, I think, worth reading, especially these days. In Stanford University, they have spent a lot of time on looking on how professional fact checkers are dealing with online environments. And they have kind of developed different tools which we are promoting. And I give a few examples. For example, in these days, we have a lot of falsified videos and images coming from both sides of the war. And it's very difficult for us to verify it unless we know how it works, how the reverse image verification tools work. Also, there are more and more video clips with false subtitles. And we are sharing also how to check if the subtitles are correct of the language we don't understand. Mikko, our founder, has written an article about how the fact-checking transparency codes have developed and how to identify who is really a fact-checker, because there are also all type of fact-checkers now in the market, and also the fact-checkers which are false. I have been working with the Stanford University research group on how to evaluate scientific claim. We have published a report in March, and there is a short article about how to do it, and finally, how to know who is expert of the given field, because that's the real question. The research is going so fast and so far that we are not able to understand everything. We have to put trust on the experts. But how can we know which expert can be trusted? This was particularly the case during the COVID, and when we had discussions about vaccination and the usefulness of masks and a lot of other things. There is a specific article about the algorithm awareness and the challenges of artificial intelligence. It's good to know how they work and how they affect on our everyday data research. Also, the privacy is important. The citizens in the digital times, they should be able to protect themselves. They should know what kind of digital footprint, active or passive, they leave, and what is really how to do and how to delete the data and the data points, for example, from the social media platforms. Our collaboration partner Citra has worked a lot with digital power things, and they have created a DigiProfile test, which I warmly recommend to you. It has been done by already over 30,000 people, and it gives you a feedback about your digital profile, your digital skills, and it's very easy to do. And the last thing is that all this is linked to the democracy. People should have an access to the truthful information. They should be able to, whatever they are deciding to vote or how they are participating, their decision should be based on facts. And this is the, let's say, the giving kind of online traffic rule. In the beginning of the Faktabari, we gave long lists of things you should check on the online environment. people are not remembering it. And we have been trying together with the Stanford people to narrow it down. And now we have 3 things one should check. Check the source, who is spreading this claim, what evidence there is, and what other sources are saying. So Faktabari is now working in a lot of projects, and EDMO, Nordic, just name it. And the last thing I would like to say that for the schools and teachers, we have created together with European SchoolNet a pretty wonderful MOOC, which is still on the European SchoolNet Academy in English to be available for everybody. References and thanks. I tried to keep the time, but I had a lot of things to say.
Thanks, Kari. Thank you so much. It's just a wealth of information for everybody to try and consume at this stage. So I hope you've been able to follow and see all the links that there are in the chat. And if you can, maybe now is a good time. If you have any questions, anything you'd like clarified by Kari, please feel free to put it into the chat and we'll happily put that to him. And indeed, thank you very much, Mikko. I see you're backing up with all of the links as well. It's a huge amount of information, I have to say. I can imagine feeling a little bit overwhelmed by it, by people. Just to ask you maybe, in terms of the EDMO Hub, in terms of Nordis, the collaboration across the Nordic countries at the moment, what kinds of things are you doing together around media literacy between Denmark, Sweden, Norway and Finland? Are there activities that you're engaged with together now targeting media literacy?
If I answer first, and I let maybe Mikko to answer to the rest of the question. Our part was to do this basic work on providing this digital information literacy guide. Now we are planning to use the guide, different ideas there, and to specify it for different type of groups, because this is not something we are going to give for the teachers. It's kind of background documentation. And now we are targeting, for example, in Faktabari, we are targeting the librarians, adult educators, and the teachers of the fundamental, the primary and secondary levels. And we are kind of continuing to creating the materials based on this.
Yeah.
But maybe Mikko can answer to the rest.
Indeed, yeah. Mikko, if you could just maybe switch on your camera and your mic. You're there with us. Hi, good to see you. Anything you want to add on that?
Exactly. So let's put it this one. This is not the state of play in Nordic countries. This is a developmental work going on within the Nordic consortium, and primarily this far, mostly by Faktabari and Helsinki University. But we are now planning on the second stage to this material that many colleagues from the Nordic countries have commented. So they would now test it in their respective countries next to the fact checkers, where basically the approach comes and with whom who are a major part of all the EDMO Hub consortia, so to say. And then by the end of the Nordic term this summer, we should be able to see a little bit more on the applicability to the different Nordic countries, based on how much the fact checkers have time to allocate on testing these new ideas. We know that the hubs are not huge and the budget are not immense, so you cannot expect miracles. And most of the colleagues are focused on fact checking. But I mean, what we try to build a link between the research and fact checkers and the media literacy.
The media literacy side, yeah. Thanks, Mikko. Great, you're going to be with us anyway, both of you, you and Kari, I presume, till the end of our session this afternoon. So thank you so much for that. I would like then, if we could, to move on to the other hub that is joining us this afternoon, and that is CEDMO, which is the hub that is covering Slovakia, Czech Republic and Poland. And so I'm really delighted to welcome Lucie Šťastná from the Institute of Communication Studies and Journalism from the Charles University in Prague in Czech Republic, and she's going to introduce the hub, the CEDMO hub, for us first of all. So, Lucie.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody. I will share with you a very brief presentation of our activities. First of all, my name is Lucie Šťastná, as you heard, and I'm also a team leader of media literacy unit in the SEDMO project. So I have a little introduction, and I would like to tell you a few words about all our activities, and then I will give the floor to two of my colleagues who will tell you more about their work in their teams. So in the SEDMO project, we are 4 teams doing different activities. Now you can see the activities. We are 4 teams doing different activities across 3 countries: Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Poland. And today we will have here my colleague from Czech team and a colleague from the Polish team. First of all, I would like to say that although the SEDMO Hub is focused on disinformation and the consequences of this phenomena, our media literacy unit doesn't understand media literacy as just, let's say, teaching about disinformation or fact-checking techniques. We see it in a broader perspective. And in this way, we try to do also our activities. For example, the Czech team is preparing now lectures for current and future journalists and current and future teachers. And they prepare for them also the handbook, which should help especially teachers, because there should be some tips for teaching. The Polish team is preparing webinars and workshops for teachers and also workshops for journalists. Then they are writing a guide for parents where they would like to advise parents how to handle with disinformation in parental mediation. And then they will launch a video and podcast campaign for young and adult audience. But Karina, my colleague, will tell you more about this afterwards. The Slovak team has 4 main activities. They launched in May. They launched a competition for teachers of media education. And their goal is to collect the best practices of teaching media education focused on disinformation. They would like to analyze it and then evaluate it. Then they are working on, now they are preparing courses for teachers and basic school students. It should be focused on critical thinking and disinformation. And they are also working on analysis of educational projects focused on disinformation. At the beginning, it was just for Slovak environment, but during our meetings, we discussed the extension, let's say, of this analysis. And now we do this Czech and Slovak team together, and we will prepare, let's say, Czechoslovakian study. Yeah, and the last team is AFP team, and our colleagues from AFP prepared video tutorials focused on fact-checking techniques. They prepared also some online guides for public. And now they are finishing self-tests focused on disinformation. Their materials are translated to all languages. It means to Czech, Slovak, and Polish language. So they do it for all our countries. And now I think it's good time to give the floor to one of my colleagues, I hope Dominik Voráč from the Czech team is here with us.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Great.
Is everything okay?
Yep. Over to you, Dominik, if you can share your screen.
Nice, nice.
So
Okay,
stop sharing.
I will share my screen. Good afternoon. My name is Dominik Voráč, and I'm a PhD student at Faculty of Education, Palacký University in Olomouc. And my field of study and my field of research is media literacy education. I also started project media education for 21st century, and I'm just with my colleagues developing some kind of activities. There might be a little different than you might know. So I would like to present it now, but let me start about really shortly about the situation of media literacy education in the Czech Republic. The thing is that what takes the Czech curriculum, media education, is a cross-cutting team. That means that every school can choose whether they will have this implementing of media literacy education in different school subjects, for example, Czech language or civics or history, or they will have separate school subjects, or they will just invite some kind of NGOs and they do, for example, some kind of workshops or debates. The thing is that in the Czech Republic, there is important role of NGOs. For example, what takes handbooks of media literacy, there are only like 2 officials handbooks in the Czech Republic. That means when the schools want to order it and use it, it's for free. But when we look at the handbooks that were created by, for example, one of the biggest NGO in the Czech Republic, People in Need, since 2006, they have like 20 handbooks. So I think I can say it. NGOs are creating media literacy education in the Czech Republic. There are other subjects, but this is NGOs has a really important role in the Czech Republic. And what takes the system of media literacy education in the Czech Republic, it looks quite nice, but the problem is that sometimes it just looks nice, and the real situation is quite different because there are not so many teachers educated in media literacy. So it's often just written in the official papers or documents that, okay, we have checked media literacy, but it's not that true, because there was some kind of research in 2018, I think, and they were testing the media literacy skills of students, and the research for that the success rate will be about 60%, but the actual success rate was only 46%. So that's not quite good. So that's why we would like to develop some kind of activities that teachers can use in every subject, in history, in civics, in Czech language, and not only in separate subject media education. We've got 4 most important points. The first one, we would like to be apolitical, because we don't want to have this kind of exercises where there will be some Czech parties, because that can result in a very bad situation with parents, let's say that way. We also don't want to use examples from, I don't know, coronavirus or vaccines. Maybe sometimes yes, but not so much, because this is really, we are on a thin ice with parents. So we are trying to develop exercises without these topics. Then we would like to go from general to the specific, and I will explain later, and you will see it on the activities. Then, of course, students should learn something, but it should be fun as well. because it's really boring when you just explain what is disinformation and then have some examples of it. And of course, it's not only about, let's say, knowledge and skills. We also want to target attitudes, values, and emotion, because these kinds of things are really important when you have some kind of opinion, and then you are fact-checking something, and it can influence you. Or, for example, you don't value the truth, so then you will share fake news, for example. And that leads me to the first activity, or the first lesson, for example, and that is, why is truth important? I don't know about other countries, but I have never encountered with a lesson where there is a reflection about the truth. Why is truth important? Why do people lie? Or what would a world look like in which everyone lies? And this can be used in for example, history lessons. We have pretty bad history with Nazism and communism, so we can use examples from that, because they were, let's say, lying to us. And of course, there are also some positive examples. For example, the Christmas truce during First World War. The Germans and British soldiers just stopped fighting during Christmas, and they were just sharing this. They were sharing presents to each other, or they were also playing football. And just imagine when if they didn't trust each other, if they just thought, okay, this might be some kind of disinformation, they wouldn't have fun. And I've got really nice activities when you have tablets at schools. You can try it. It's called the evolution of trust. And I won't explain it so much. It's just, it uses the game of theory when you just choose whether you want to cheat or cooperate. And there is a really nice conclusion about it, that it's better to cooperate than to cheat. So you can try it. I think it's really nice, with nice graphic, and the conclusion is really helpful. So this is the first activity. Then I'm just, everything is okay? Is my internet connection stable? Do you hear me?
Our connection is fine, but just be a bit careful with time, Dominik. We need to move on a little bit if you don't mind. Sorry to rush you.
Okay. How many minutes do I have?
You have about another 10 minutes.
Okay, that's nice. Thank you. Then, for example, we have activities with optical illusion about reflection. Are we always right? This is an example of Shepard tables. And it looks, they are like different tables, but they are the same. And it's really fun when students can try it if it's the same, and then they are like, wow, it's the same, and it doesn't look like this on the first sight. And so this is some kind of icebreaker, or when you want to teach about disinformation, this is quite a funny activity. For older students, you can use cognitive reflection test. I don't know whether you know it. It's from the famous book Thinking Fast and Slow. And I tried a lot of times. And there were no case that I always say something like, okay, so who will be the first can have a reward, or something like that. And always the first person is not right. They just say, oh, it's 10 cents, but it's in fact only 5 cents. So, or 1.05 and 5 cents. And then this is some kind of general, these are some kind of general activities, and we can go to the specific ones. Something that is the example of real world. I've got this image. The first one is with kids in a museum, and they are looking at the phones. And behind them, there's this famous painting from Rembrandt. And I also did an experiment and share it in one Facebook group. And a lot of people from the age from 30 to 40 said something like, oh, this generation is bad. They are only on their phones and they don't appreciate such a great paintings. So this is real. And I just show the picture to the students and asking questions. Something like, what do you see? What do you think about the picture? And there are a lot of students that think, okay, they are on the mobile phones, but there are also other students that say, but they might do some activities on the phone, some exercises. And that's right, they were just doing what they were told to do activities, to do exercises, to have like more fun at the museum. The second picture is about Prince Charles, sorry. Charles, am I right?
William.
William, sorry, sorry. Misinformation, you see. No, you see that on the first side, he's showing his middle finger. But when you take it from the different perspective, he was just showing that he had third child. So this is also a very nice example. And then we can work with the power of perspective. On this picture, we have Angela Merkel, who looks like a leader, and Donald Trump looks like a spoiled child. But when we look on the other picture, and it looks like he's the leader and everyone is listening to him. And there are, I think, two more points of view, and I just do the groups and I put different photos of the situation into one group. So one group has, for example, this one, second group has this one, third group has another one, and then we are just comparing it. Then we can also use funny quizzes. What is truth and what is not? So, for example, there is this story about Bear Wojtek, who was adopted by a supply company of the Polish army during World War II, and he even gained the rank of corporal. And I just say the story and ask students, is it true or not? And they are just guessing, and this is actually true. Then we've got, for example, this one about water bears, that they can survive repeated heating to 150 degrees Celsius, several hours in liquid helium and each other. And it looks like this kind of creature is not possible that it lives, but it's actually true as well. Then I have another example that is true. And I've got one myth that Napoleon was short. He wasn't short. During his ages, he was average. So they can just try to guess whether it's true or not. And then the conclusion is we are in a really complicated world, and we just don't know what is true and what not, and what is not. So, and then we can start to speak about disinformation and how to fact check and other stuff. And the last two activities, we can use this in our, let's say, language lessons. We can create false emails full of, for example, grammar or stylistic mistakes, and we can analyze it in, for example, Czech language. And then another conclusion, like, you see, this is not from the professionals, and a lot of these emails are like created by ordinary people who doesn't have even any knowledge. They don't know how to write, and they don't know how to fact check the information. So the credibility of the source is not that good. And you can see on the form. And the last one, when we just have the form, then we can analyze the content, and we can create a lot of articles where 80% of information is true, but 20% of information are not so like true. And students should like analyze the text and find what is not true and repair it. And this is really great because they are learning new things about topics, for example, history of communication, and also they are learning how to read critically. And that's all. Thank you for your attention. I hope it gave you some kind of inspiration. And yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominik. It's really nice to see all those different exercises and the different images that you're using as part of your work. Anybody got any questions or points they'd like to put to Dominik? I must admit, personally, I was curious about the fact that you try hard to make sure to avoid difficult topics as part of your media literacy teaching. I presume most of this is for schools and for young people. Pretty difficult to avoid difficult topics, and I think that's something that many people feel actually we have to tackle the difficult topics. So I just wondered, does that cause you any problems in the Czech Republic when you try to integrate media literacy into schools?
Actually, I read a lot of articles in the media, and a lot of politicians said that, for example, NGOs, when they teach media literacy, it's some kind of brainwashing. And I also read...
Oops, your connection is doing something strange for us at the moment.
An article that are there, but it might cause problem. And what takes my experience, not really, because
Okay.
I try to avoid it.
Okay, there's a question in from Finland. How do you include teaching around bias, or do you include teaching around bias as well as misinformation?
I'm just thinking about it. Sometimes I just have this list of bias, and I am explaining it. And now I'm trying to create some kind of exercise where we can when we have some kind of activities, and students should think about it, but it's really hard. I have to say, it's really difficult.
Yeah,
So,
I think one of the things you highlight is the fact actually sharing some of these kinds of exercises across countries is really useful, because it would be nice to see how other people are tackling the topic of bias. So maybe Faye, if that's something that is close to your heart, you might put a link or something into the chat. Look, thank you very much. Thanks, Dominik. You're with us until the end. We'd like to go to our third speaker from EDMO at the moment. So I am hoping that we have Karina Stasiuk-Krajewska, Professor of Media Studies at University of Social Sciences and Humanities, SWPS, in Warsaw in Poland. Karina was trying to do two things at the one time this afternoon. She's trying to teach as well as to talk.
Yes, so, but I'm here. I was listening to
Great.
the webinar, and that was very interesting for me. And now I will try to share my screen. I hope it will work. So please give me one moment.
No problem.
Okay, and now I think you should see my presentation. Yes,
perfect.
Great.
Karina, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you for the invitation. And the first point I'd like to mention is that, in fact, I'm more the specialist on media studies than the specialist of media literacy. And also that's why I decided, together with Lucie, rather to talk about something which is, let's say, closer to media and media systems in our educational plans. Because as Lucie mentioned, in Poland, we planned, and in fact, we have already started or almost started, let's say, the implementation of many very different forms of educational activities. And they are aimed mainly for the building, increasing the awareness of the mechanism of disinformation, and also increasing the ability of critical thinking. And the third point is providing knowledge and, first of all, skills regarding the use of information verification tools. And also, as Lucie mentioned, a characteristic feature of our campaign is targeting it at really various groups and audience. So we are planning an action aimed at teachers, at so-called young people and parents, and also professional groups, so like journalists, fact checkers, and even public relations people. And I must say that they are very interested in our offer to have some workshops on disinformation. This is something extra what we are thinking about now, but I think it would be very, very useful. But also an important group for us is so-called general public. And general public is, now I have to change my slide. General public is a little bit, let's say, strange concept. Because as we well know, this is a category that it's very difficult to define. And also, I must say that in the opinion of many sociologists, something like the general public even doesn't exist. So there's a problem for us, yes? That's a problem with the identification of tools and ideas. But our idea referring to general public is, let's say, some kind of metaphor, maybe shortcut. And the idea refers to a person with competences allowing for conscious use of media, interested in expanding their knowledge and skills, and relatively open to discussion and learning about other views. But on the other hand, such a person does not need to have any special, let's say, education or exceptional media literacy. So this is our general definition of general public. And in the context of this target and this definition, we decide to use two communication channels, as you can see on the slide, and two media formats at the same time, YouTube videos and podcasts. For the implementation of our goals, I was talking about them one moment ago, the decision on the content was also important, but to the content, I will come back in a moment. Now, I would like to focus on the formats. Our idea is that we will have 10 YouTube films, and each video will be approximately 15 minutes long. And we will have also 10 podcasts, and every podcast will be about 40 minutes long. Because such a duration is typical and also optimal in terms of attractiveness of the public. What is also very important for us is that these 10 films and 10 podcasts will create some kind of series, let's say, which, as we hope, as we assumed, will result in audience attachment to this format. So people will come back and we would like to look for, waiting for another film, next podcast. The decision regarding the format and content that we made resulted, as I mentioned, from the assumptions regarding the specificity of our target group, and also the currently dominant ways of using media. Because, as we all know, and we have a lot of research that showed it, that in contemporary culture, written text is becoming a relatively, let's say, less and less popular and it's going to be less and less popular form of communication. Recipients, especially those who spend a lot of time on the internet, and the time is getting longer and longer, as I will show in a moment. These recipients are not interested, generally speaking, of course, in reading, and often do not have high competencies in the area of reading, but in fact, they have quite good general cultural competencies. They don't want to read, but they are quite consciousness, let's say, users of the media. So we assumed that written text may be discouraging and difficult for the recipient. And on the other hand, we have been observing an increase in the role of so-called audiovisual communication in general. And that's why this picture is here, because as I suppose you all know, it has even become common to refer to the contemporary culture as audiovisual culture. So in this context, the film was for us an obvious choice in our plans. The second decision we made was to choose YouTube as our movie distribution channel. And there were several reasons for this decision. The first one is that YouTube is a very important channel functioning in the internet. And as you can see on the slide, the popularity of generally understanding internet as a medium is still growing, which is shown on the slide by the growing time spent in the internet. I'm here referring to very important for the sphere of internet or social media also research of the agency we are, the report of the agency whose site we are social. And also, as we can see on the next slide, that's very interesting for me, online video is recognized as the source of learning, It's very important, by wide and diverse audience. You can see that the difference, it's not so big, in fact. And it's very important when we try to get to so-called general public. Also, internet is obviously a channel that enables further redistribution, sharing of content, both by us and the users. It also gives a wide and basically unlimited, of course, I know it's not so obvious, but generally speaking, unlimited access to the content. This content can be disseminated both by our guests, and they are usually very well-known people with so-called large ranges, and also may be shared by institutions we are cooperating with. What is also important, and sometimes we forget about it, that YouTube is one of the most popular social media, in fact, the second one just after the Facebook. And YouTube is used, as I mentioned, by quite diverse social group. And to ensure getting out of a closed academic environment, which we really want to do, and reaching a wide audience, it's important to use social media. And I think that YouTube is a very good choice also because people are looking for something, let's say, deeper in YouTube, something that could learn them anything about the world. It is also worth mentioning, for example, that, for example, in Poland, let's say only, I think, 1/3 of people use video content available on demand. But it's exactly 55% of people who use YouTube films, who are watching YouTube films. It's quite a big difference, which is also important. YouTube is watched by 67% of those with higher education. Now I'm referring to the research of the National Media Institute in Poland. Finally, last but not least, YouTube is one, as we also know, of the most important sources also of disinformation, because YouTube is one of the most important sources of so-called junk news, which later are spread on social media as disinformation narratives. However, also, as we all know, YouTube has its own limitations. For example, for a video to be attractive to an average audience, let's say general public, the length of the video should be around 15 minutes, not longer. Often, however, these 15 minutes are only enough to say the most important things, without deepening the problem, without deepening the topic, and without a broader context. And that's why we decided that each such conversation, each such interview from YouTube would also be published in a different format as a much longer podcast. Why podcasts? A podcast, due to the typical way of receiving it, for example, in the car or in a train, can be much longer, of course, but also, paradoxically, it's more engaging than a movie. This is the very old idea, in fact, of the researcher, media researcher, Marshall McLuhan, who had first a very controversial idea that radio is more engaging than TV. And I think we may see that that's true with podcasts. Additionally, we observe the growing, of course, popularity of this format, of the format of podcast. The results of the survey, you can see it on the slide, shows that 64% of people in Poland listen to podcasts, and 33% listen to podcasts at least one a week. It's quite, let's say, quite often. And at the same time, as you can see also on the slide, at the same time, recipients expect more in-depth, expanded, and more difficult content from podcasts. For example, as we can see, the answers to the question, why do you listen to podcasts? For a lot of people, the reason is connected to education, learning, or understanding the world. Therefore, the recipient will have a choice to watch a short film or listen to a longer podcast. We also assume that those who are interested in YouTube content will reach for podcasts because what is very interesting, as you can see on the slide, there is a strong synergy between YouTube as a channel and podcast as a format. From the point of view of the characteristic of the target group and its communication needs, not only the format is important, I were talking about the format, but now I'd like to talk a little bit about the selection of guests for the interviews, because I think that this content is also something very, very important.
Karina, I hate to interrupt you, but we're a little bit tight on time.
Last slide. This is my last slide. How much time do I have? Sorry.
Take another minute or two to finish it up. That'd be great.
So here you can see our ideas about our guests. Yeah. And of course, I can imagine that for people not from Poland, these names are not very recognizable, sorry, let's say. But what I like to point is that we have people from really very different people, very various people. For example, Natalia Hatarska is a technologist, a futurist. She's the author of very popular in Poland book titled The Age of Paradoxes. Andrzej Leder is a philosopher of culture. Is also psychotherapist. We would like to talk to them about, let's say, historical context of this information and how this information is located in our, let's say, common imaginary, some kind of psychological notion. Martyna Bidziukiewicz, Agnieszka Legucka, they are the specialists on the geopolitical context of disinformation, also cooperating with European Union. Adam Leszczyński, he is a sociologist, he is also a historian. And for example, with him, we would like to talk about historical context. Why do people in Poland are so vulnerable, let's say, for disinformation? Maybe we have some answer in the history. Maciej Okraszewski, Aleksandra Stanisławska, journalists, are the popularizers of science. So, summing up and coming to the end, I would like to say that we hope and we assume, let's say, that this kind of format and this kind of content will allow us to reach this so-called general public, which means a diverse audience, in fact. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Karina. That's really interesting. Of course, my first question to you is, when will your videos and when will your podcasts be available?
They will be available from, in fact, in many points. We are still discussing that. Of course, the main source will be the sources connected to our university, because we are very, very strong with podcasts and also with video. We have very good communication, so it will be the starting point. But also now we are talking with people who help us, with entities who help us with some kind of technical part of this realization. So also they will, they ask us to have the possibility of sharing the content. Yes. So this is our first idea, and also as I told, we are thinking about sharing it by our guests and by institution we are cooperating with in Poland.
Great.
The Magog, Konkret 24, etc. In fact, we have a lot of channels, and we hope that it will be interesting content for many channels.
Great. I think from the community's point of view, we'd love to see them when you have these materials available. It would be great to share them, and because I think, as you say yourself, the general public is a really difficult target group to target, and it's really interesting to see how you've put that all together and that you're thinking indeed around the way that you're going to approach. So, Karina, thank you so much. This was just a kind of a tiny flavor of what's going on, of course, in all of in these hubs. They're all doing lots and lots of different work. I have everybody I know on the screen at the moment. Dominik, Lucie, Emma's there as well too. We also have, I know that Kari is there somewhere as well, and Miko. Has anybody got any questions or anything they'd like to put to them? Miko's just put a long reference in the chat to the video as a channel. Miko, you just want to explain what that is?
Thanks. That is just an example how we try to bring it to the fact-checking skills and what we are doing, because I think what we have tried to put it is that there is all kind of media literacy efforts, but within EDMO we try to focus on something that works with the fact-checking approach, because fact-checkers know something about the information disorders, and that could be the value added. But this is a modest try, the only one we have translated in English, but we plan to do some more material like that with a very high quality, so that it could reach then wider audiences with like broadcasters and so on.
So these are skills videos, particularly.
Videos type of things. There is actually, AFP is doing something like that. It's a bit more formal, and unfortunately just with a meta, so it puts it a little bit different angle to them, to the topics probably covered. But I think, as far as I understand, the format is the video and very short videos. I was a bit surprised on the length of the videos, people, because I don't believe it.
15 minutes. Yeah.
But obviously audiences matter, and as far as I understand, the report that Kari referred, the videos was very much in the loop as well.
Yeah. Look, thank you all very much. Emma, I don't know whether you want to do any sort of concluding in terms of, there's so many different things happening in these hubs, isn't there? It's difficult to kind of make the comparisons across from one to the other. But do you see other things happening at that general audience level that maybe are worth referencing here, that maybe would be of interest to these hubs and to any of our people who are taking part this afternoon? Are any of the other hubs busy with that general public target, do you know?
Well, in the last session, one of these sessions, remember there was Ricardo from the Irish Hub was presenting the Libraries project, which I think is very interesting in terms of trying to reach a wider, more general audience and going outside formal education. I can't think of anything else on the topic.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
Exactly.
I'm sure that there are, exactly. And I think that's probably what we want to try and do going forward, is to try and make some of these connections, because it would be nice to see examples going from one to the other. And then maybe we can test out Karina and Mikko's slight difference of opinion as to whether a 15-minute YouTube has as good an impact as a 2-minute. But I'm sure we'll come back to that again. Look, thank you so much. We're just out on time at the moment. I see, whoops, 2 new messages. Let me just check down. Thanks, Chloe. I see you've put in the initiatives, the Ireland Hub with libraries. That's great. And we also have the comment there from Mikko. Look, it was just a quick look at what's happening with these 2 hubs. We'll be back again in another month, where we'll be looking at a further series of the EDMO hubs. Before I go this afternoon, we have a couple of slides we wanted to share with you. Just to, if we could start off the first one, thanks, Chloe. Just a couple of articles that we thought were kind of relevant from our newsletter recently that we hope will be of interest to this audience. First of all, the news yesterday, which Kari already mentioned, about the launch of the guidelines for teachers and educators on tackling disinformation by the European Commission. If you check out our website at the moment and our news site, you will see the links to all the different resources. We also are carrying a very interesting article by Tessa Joles, president of the Centre for Media Literacy in USA, based on her Fulbright NATO Security Studies report. That will be up on the site in the next 24 hours. We also have another article from Jordan Hill of OECD on unpacking algorithm literacy, referred to earlier on by Kari, and of course it's something we often come back to. And then we also wanted to recommend to you the Baltic states using MIL to fight for the democratic future. It's an article which appeared in our October newsletter, and it's by Aukse Balsitien from the Virties Magnus University in Kaunas in Lithuania. So we also wanted to recommend that to you. Next slide, maybe, if we could also then tell you about our next events coming up. We have on the 16th of November, we're going to look at 3 further hubs. That's the one in France, the Iberofire one, which is for Spain and Portugal, and then the one for Belgium and the Netherlands together. So that's 3 hubs, 16th of November, join us for that. On the 14th of December, we will have a workshop on our SMILES project, which is a series of materials that have been created for teachers and librarians, developed through a European Erasmus project, which their materials are now available. We also have our conference on the 19th of October, which is next week, which is part of the Global MIL Week, or the Global MIL activities at the end of October. It's called Media Literacy for Media, or MLA for Media Lit, and it's specifically on teacher education in digital and media literacy. So if you're interested in teacher education, both pre-service and in-service, then join us for that. And our annual conference takes place the 7th and 8th of June together with KU Leuven here in Belgium. I think that's everything from me, just about out of time. Thanks for joining us today. You'll find more information about us on our site, and of course our newsletter is worth signing up for. Thanks, Chloe. Thanks everybody who took part this afternoon. We really appreciated having you with us, and that's all for us for now. And I'm just going to ask the speakers just to stay on at the end of the session just for a moment, and thank you to everybody else for joining us this afternoon. Bye bye now.